The oldest literature known to man tells of an all-powerful force underlying everything in nature and occurring throughout the universe. This mysterious force was called prana, and those who learned how to tap it, to channel it through themselves, were said to become like gods. But the world was barbarian then. Plunder and brute power were easier to understand than godliness. Gradually, blood and sand covered the ancient texts. Countless generations would live and die before Western civilization took hold on the shores of the Mediterranean. Less than 100 years ago, Western scholars began to translate what they took to be ancient Hindu myths. A literature richly imaginative with its talk of cosmic energy and chariots of fire flown by gods from the sky. It remained for the dawning of the space age to prompt us to re-examine our skeptical dismissal of these Indian writings. 20th century science has finally developed instruments sensitive enough to measure what a handful of mystics and psychics down through the ages have claimed to be able to perceive all along. Is the invisible force the Hindus call prana the same as what Soviet scientists referred to as bioenergy in this experiment in psychokinesis, or mind over matter? Could it be the mysterious energy that some psychics claim to see as the body's aura, and which American scientist Valerie Hunt was apparently able to record in a revolutionary experiment at UCLA? Could it be related to the ki power, which masters in the martial arts claim to focus to perform astonishing feats of strength? Every culture in the history of man has had individuals claiming to possess extraordinary powers. Will we be the first to prove that such powers actually exist? Geniuses, psychics, superstar athletes, masters of the martial arts. What is it that they all have in common?
Ki means power. Ki power is not only board breaking log or concrete things. More than his mental power is very important.
Yes, sir. Not only will ki power break the boards, but ki power can heal, to help mend torn muscles and torn ligaments, and to help healing a broken bone. I've had my ankle broke and my ribs broke, and Grandmaster Lee did ki power to these injured areas to help the healing faster. Even when we practice, we can feel ki power from Master Lee's body. It flows through their bodies constantly. You can feel when you touch them, when you're near them, when you see them, when you're talking to them. The ki power just flows around them. almost have an ESP feeling about it with their own key power. You can sit and think, and they can almost answer your question before you ask it.
On the surface, it might seem ridiculous to compare a brilliant pianist with an unstoppable running back. But they have one significant thing in common. They are extraordinary. Why? Where does their gift come from? Is it possible that they are able to tap some sort of force which is generally unavailable to the average person? The Lee brothers, Ju Bang Lee and Ju Sang Lee, are masters of the Korean martial art Hwarang Do. Using ki power or internal energy, they are able, they say, to make their bodies lighter, heavier, hard like steel, or capable of blocking out pain. Ki power supposedly resides in everyone in an area about 3 inches below the navel, but only masters have learned to manipulate it like the Lee brothers. They are able to push their bodies seemingly beyond human endurance, without injury. A steel wedge pressed against the throat, struck by blows hard enough to splinter wood. The object, to strike hard enough with a razor-sharp sword to slice the zucchini in two without cutting flesh, while blindfolded.
Concentration aspect is the most important. Preparatory exercise beforehand is one method of building up this power, controlling it for short periods of time. Then when the truck passes over the stomach, as long as the mind does not lose concentration, then there's no problem. If it loses concentration even for 1 instant, then injury can occur.
It's impossible to tell whether a phenomenally gifted athlete is simply doing things any good athlete can do, but doing them better, or whether he is also tapping an entirely different level of human capability. In the extraordinary experiment filmed by Soviet scientists, which you are about to see, there is no such confusion. The gifted subject is clearly doing something people are supposedly not able to do. Now, either the film is scientific fraud, or Nina Kulagina is moving objects with willpower alone. American scientists who have seen this film do not consider it fraudulent. Madame Kulagina has become quite famous for her controversial and still unexplained power. Whatever it is, it reportedly leaves her exhausted after a session like this. Dr. Thelma Moss, a leading American researcher in extrasensory phenomena, was impressed enough by witnesses' reports of Madame Kulagina's feats that she designed some willpower experiments of her own. These were in conjunction with her pioneering work in Kirlian photography, which some researchers believe to reveal some form of energy surrounding the body.
There we see one man's finger and another one interacting with him. As we watch, we can observe that while the two fingers are in fairly close position to each other, the person on the left is blank in this interaction. As soon as the other person removes his hand, the emanations come out brilliantly all around. Here we have an interaction between two men who are having an argument. As they continue with their verbal fight with each other, the person on the left gets weaker and weaker. By an act of will, the man on the right is actually erasing that other person, but suddenly he fights back. And here you can watch, slowed down, that extraordinary interaction between the two men.
No camera is used to make a Kirlian photograph. A weak current of electricity passing through the film to an object in direct contact with the film produces the picture. For Kirlian movies, objects, in this case fingertips, are placed against a transparent electrode and filmed by an ordinary motion picture camera. All right. You're neither a 10th degree black belt nor a mysterious woman from behind the Iron Curtain. Let's say you're an ordinary person. Suddenly you're singled out by crisis. A friend is trapped under the wheels of a car. You have to lift the car to save his life. Could you do it? Most of us have heard stories of people who did. And of course, they're never able to repeat the action later. Where did that burst of superhuman energy come from? Jack Swartz says there was nothing extraordinary about his powers of concentration until he found himself fighting with the Dutch resistance during World War II. Suddenly, he had to become almost superhuman just to stay alive. Now, he is a favorite subject with several leading researchers in parapsychology.
There's alcohol to get rid of any of the oils, and what I'm doing right here. I just blow in there just to evaporate some of the alcohol, and I just rub some electrode paste into the skull. And it'll glob more. And I'll just repeat this once again. Eric, shoot this up. Control frontal area. That goes into number 8.
Well, I'm going to push this needle through the left bicep, and I like to state it is an unsterilized needle, and let it totally penetrate. It will go in on this side here on the inside of the arm and come out on the outside. And I'll leave it in for several seconds, and then we'll pull it out again to show that the first place in the recording that's at the moment being done of my brain waves, my heart rate, and my muscle motion, and the galvanic skin response to see what kind of changes would occur physiologically. And then when I pull it out, the attempt is going to be made not to make it bleeding and to have the holes close as fast as possible. Would you like to comment something on this?
Well, I think I'd like to say, Jack, that although under some circumstances this could occur without bleeding, certainly most often with a needle of this size, pushing it all the way through the upper arm, you would get a reasonable amount of bleeding, and particularly if you happen to hit a larger vein.
Do you think, Dr. Leslie, that there would be any indication of physiological changes taking place?
Right, I think that would be a much better way to evaluate
Right.
it. You're hooked up to this apparatus, and I think that would give a much better idea of what response is occurring.
Okay, I will now start penetrating.
There doesn't appear to be any bleeding at this point, and certainly I didn't detect any particular appreciation of pain on Jack's part. The instrumentation will perhaps show whether there's been a change of any sort or not.
Could you give a comment on where it has penetrated? Has it gone just through skin, or has it gone through tissue? Has it hit some veins?
It appears, Jack, as though it's gone through certainly the skin, possibly a small vein in this area, and I think through the biceps muscle as well.
I'm now going to pull the needle out, and then you just observe what happens with the arm. Now, Dr. Leslie, would you be so kind to put a kind of a physical tourniquet on there to see if we can get any blood out of it?
Certainly, there's no evidence of external bleeding and no evidence of any hematoma underneath the skin. No swelling of any kind, really.
The Lee brothers, Nina Kulagina, Jack Swartz astonish us. But spectacular though they are, their feats alone can hardly be said to prove the existence of an unknown force. If only we could see it somehow. Perhaps we can. Again, through Thelma Moss's Kirlian photography and the mysterious phenomenon of the phantom leaf.
Well, this was a very long and frustrating process, the search for the phantom leaf. And it was only after 2 years that we finally obtained this. Our procedure evolved so that we would cut a leaf directly from the plant. Then, before the leaf was ever placed on film, part of it was cut. It was then placed in contact with the 4x5 piece of film, covered with a piece of glass, and with a piece of copper backing. An electrode was attached to the stem of the leaf. Suddenly, the phantom. Not only do we see the edge where the leaf has been sharply cut, but continuing beyond where we assume the leaf would show had it not been cut away. This particular leaf has been cut in a pie shape. We can see that the phantom gradually emerges. When the emanations do emerge from where the leaf has been cut, it shows the same jet-like emission that the rest of the leaf reveals. Here is a phantom produced not in our laboratory, but by Mr. Robert Wagner at Cal State Long Beach. He chose an ivy leaf for this portrait, and very brilliantly one can see that the tip of the leaf is clearly visible, even though it has been cut away.
Is the energy body of the leaf, which we seem to see in the Kirlian photograph, related in some way to the invisible energy with which Nina Kulagina manipulates objects? or which the Lee brothers are apparently able to focus. In the electromagnetic spectrum, radio and television waves are transmitted and received with the use of antennas. If what we are looking for is a form of energy, would an antenna of some kind help us to find it? Dr. Paris N. Garefis, a Los Angeles dental surgeon, read some amazing accounts of dental implant operations performed beneath pyramid structures. The report stated that pain and swelling were significantly reduced, perhaps due to something called pyramid power.
The first operation a year ago was done without the pyramid grips because by that time we didn't have them in the ceiling of our operatory. Today we will perform this operation under the pyramid grips, which at this point are hanging in the ceiling of our operatory, and we are very curious to find to what extent we will have different type of phenomenon, pain-wise, healing-wise, as well as from the personal point of view of our patient. We have been using now the pyramids installed in one of my operatories for about 4 months. And my observations were very encouraged to the point that we don't have as much pain, and in such of those heavy operated patients, we didn't have pain at all. Swelling-wise, which is a procedure that always comes post-operatively, we were doing very, very well, and in several instances people went right away in their jobs. In any kind of surgical procedure, we incise and we break the tissues. And there is a theory that that way we break that magnetic field. Pyramids as antennas take, concentrate, give back bioplasmic energy to the surrounding field, and we don't have as much breakdown of this magnetic field. Therefore, we have a better kind of healing post-operatively, as well as we have elimination of the pain procedures. There is a definite fact that there is a source of energy activated through the pyramids.
Dr. Garefis met with Nick Edwards, the inventor of a lens-shaped pyramid grid structure, and Tom Conmey, a metallurgist who developed the special metals used in both the dental implant operations and in the pyramid grid system.
This is a pyramid system which I designed about 3 years ago, and it's a very advanced system. We have been able to sleep as little as 3 hours a night for the last 3 years with very good dream remembrance and a very good charge of body energy, which will give us energy throughout the rest of the day.
I have to get up very early in the morning, and one that likes to sleep as I do, I have no trouble at all getting up and feel just terrific.
The system itself is actually a lens of 25 individual pyramids curved to concentrate or focus the pyramid energy resulting from the shape of the pyramid. Hi, Courtney.
Hi, sweetheart.
Hi. Courtney was conceived underneath this grid. We had tried 3 years to have a child, and we found as soon as we put up the grid that conception occurred within 30 days. And in fact, sex became a lot more pleasurable. And one's sexual awareness or sensitivity to it is increased dramatically, and this is the result of one nice try.
I had a terrific pregnancy, the most beautiful pregnancy I've known of, and there was a period of time we took the pyramid down for 5 days, and that was the first time that I felt like I was pregnant. I was being bombarded with signs of pregnancy that I had not had before, and when we put the pyramid back up, they went away.
Courtney just loves it in here. In fact, she's so spoiled that it's a big fight between the dogs, the cats, and Courtney to have bed space on this bed. And she has her own little pyramid, of course, but she likes the big one.
There are 2 different phases of pyramid power. One, in ancient history, when the pyramids were built, And at that time, people apparently knew what the double pyramid power was all about and how to use it. And the modern history of pyramid power, which begins back in the 30s when people suddenly discovered that there was such a thing. We're all familiar with the antennas we use for radios and television and radar. These are specially designed shapes to pick up energy in the electromagnetic spectrum. The pyramid is apparently a specially designed shape to pick up the energy in one of the other spectrums. The other energy spectrums, which are known to exist in physics, have not been explored because they don't have any meters or means of measuring it or means of generating it.
Is it possible that the positive effects supposedly produced by pyramid power are actually psychological in origin?
When you can take a dead fish and put it in a pyramid and have it mummified, very few people would agree that you could psych out a dead fish. Therefore, there is something here that is beyond just a psychological effect on human beings.
This is a vast dry lake. Once there was water here, and life. What secret lies hidden in this strange dance which may change the face of medicine in the 20th century? Emily Conrad, dancer, healer, and shaman, the Indian word for medicine man, believes the secret to healing today lies in our forgotten origins and those parts of ourselves ignored and repressed as man evolved into a thinking being. To Emily Conrad, the unknown force is actually our own life force. We are energy, she says, and we must flow freely to stay healthy and to grow. To achieve this unrestricted flow in those she works with, Emily claims to use an ancient technique called channeling, the same as that used by many native healers. She works not with the physical body, she says, but a body of energy surrounding it. The startling thing about her extravagant claims is that for the first time in history, there may now be scientific data to back them up.
I guess these very disparate energies came together a couple of years ago when I came to Dr. Hunt's laboratory to demonstrate some movement to her, some movement that I had developed.
I had myself an experience. I've traveled throughout the world studying primitive dance, but I had never seen any dance that looked like this.
I began to develop a kind of a dance that I'll call channeling, that is a healing dance. And I wanted to find out from someone who knew nothing about what I was doing what the aura would look like. And so I called someone up and I said, can you recommend the best aura reader in Los Angeles?
It was an incredible day for me because at the time I was still working and practicing in my living room. And Emily came in and she took out a bell and she began shaking it and then she began howling. And it got louder and louder, and I began worrying about the noise. But as this process is going on, the energy got more intense, and it built up, and it was this incredible explosion of energy, and it changed color frequencies, and it went into areas that I knew to mean healing.
Well, after Roz gave me her report, I called Dr. Hunt, and I told her a little bit about what was going on. She said, I'll clear the decks.
Early morning, we met, and Emily said we were going to make history today. And I was very excited about making history until Susan got out of the car and started to walk. And at one time, back in the 1940s, I was head of a polio clinic. And I thought I knew polio. And this was 21 or 20 years that she had had this condition. And my crest fell. And I said, yes, we made history today. I opened the building for the first time since I had been here. I was positive that absolutely nothing would happen. But with Emily's excitement and with my appreciation for her work, I had to record it. the three of us went into a conference in the corner. And they told me about things like chakras that I'd never heard of. They told me about auras that I'd never heard of. And finally I said, Rosalind, would you come over and tell me where I am to put these electrodes? We use the technique called electromyography, or electrical recording of muscle, because it is the most valid measure of what happens when a muscle contracts. In muscle contraction, a minute amount of electrical energy is generated. This can be picked up by these small white sensor discs you see me placing on the surface of the muscle. The small package worn around the waist is a miniature radio transmitter. By plugging the wires from the discs into the transmitter, muscle electrical signals are sent across space, like radio signals, to the receiving equipment behind the glass compartment. This system is similar to what monitored the astronaut's heart and blood pressure during flights.
Energy is coming from Emily's hands, and it's producing a magenta light going up the internal flow of the leg. It's changing Susan's aura into a more lavender color. She began in a blue. We're going from blue to violet and back and forth. We're starting to get a secondary shell of energy about 4 feet from the body, and it encompasses both the healer and the healee at this point. Emily's pulling a lot of energy up the main central core of her body, and it's coming out her hands and her head and entering Susan's body. There's beginning to be an awful lot of pink in the lavender that both of them have around their bodies. And the secondary shell of energy that we established is beginning to go a little pink out here. As they're working, we're getting aura up around the top of the head, and it's very white, pluming from the top of the head. The rest of the aura is holding pretty closely at 6 inches from the body. It comes down the body. Not so much the arms as the main core of the body and the legs. Emily's beginning to be as violet as Susan, so that the two of them have kind of established a relationship.
I had just been pretty disappointed by doctors and had a lot of trouble with my surgeries, and I wasn't going to go back to a doctor again. And through a friend of a friend, I heard about Emily, and she said, sure, come on over and, we'll see what we can do. So I went to her studio, and she asked me to lie down on the floor and tied yellow sashes around my knees. Again, with the bells and everything, and I was a little bit nervous when I started. But as she started making the sounds, my eyes were closed, and I wanted to peek, but I didn't. And I thought I'd be scared or something, but I felt really good, and I just felt all this movement in my legs, and they felt like they were perfect. Both of them were equal, and we both knew that something would happen if we worked together.
I began to work with Susan on our sessions 3 or 4 times a week, and after about 3 months, the activity began, and that's when we decided to work in tandem to do a project with Rosalind doing the aura reading, and Dr. Hunt doing the measuring, and Susan doing the regenerating, and me doing the whatever it is I do.
And there's a real interesting discharge. Oh, there goes another one. Did you catch that, Dr. Hunt? As it goes by?
Yes, Rosalind, we picked it up.
That seems to increase the energy faster. Every time you get around a ball and socket joint, the energy goes in so much faster than when you're working over the center of the body.
You said my aura is blue and changes to lavender from blue. What does that mean?
Well, the aura itself is very fluid around the body. It exists in a 4 to 5 inch area on almost everybody all of the time. Most mechanical equipment has an aura, and the human body has an aura that emanates energy and life force, and it changes its colors according to how you feel that day. Now, I think most of us
and growing and being with people. We get used to being with people or not being with people, and we forget that when someone walks up to us that we don't particularly like, it's because they plunk their energy down next to us, and we're interacting in terms of physical energy, and that may be disruptive. Now, you're blue almost all the time. That means you're kind of a mellow person. You're kind of calm and mild, and when Emily does healing on you and begins channeling energy into you, it transforms you into a different frequency, into a color that's a healing modality. She goes into violet and white and amber, and colors that change your cell structure, your muscle structure, the way you're able to move. You, in effect, ride the energy. That's what does the physical therapy that moves things around. Now, I think that one of the potentials of man is that all man should be able to see auras, should be able to see into bodies and through walls. I think that's part of our potential that we've never tapped, and that when we become more aware of living in a world that's really energy, that a lot of our attitudes toward people will change too.
Like all investigators exploring uncharted areas, we did not set out to prove anything. Our aim was to study what happened to weak and paralyzed muscles during treatment by an unconventional healer. Electromyographic data of this experiment were digitally converted for statistical comparison. You will see some of the remarkable findings in a few minutes. In the meantime, Emily continued to work with Susan and periodically filmed the healing sessions to reveal any further progress. Throughout these pictures, Susan's muscles move involuntarily as the result of the healing energy. In other words, even if muscles are degenerated to the extent that Susan cannot move them, the healing technique apparently can provide the energy source to create contraction and to start regeneration. In the beginning hip pictures, you will see that the hip is moved by the spinal movement, not by hip muscles. Here the energy moves through the extensive scar tissue caused by the surgery that built up her shallow hip joint, making it more stable. In these later hip films, note the dramatic, large, involuntary sequences rhythmically flowing in great undulating waves, as though the nervous control system is being reprogrammed. At the first healing sessions, there was no contraction of the hip flexors or buttocks muscles. In this beginning knee sequence, notice the energy is flowing downward from the hip, activating the knee muscles into subtle, involuntary contraction, like the growth of a tree, outward. In these later pictures, see the strong rhythmic action of the muscles above the knee. It is important to remember that at the first healing, these muscles had only a tremor. Observe carefully the flatness of the foot and the stiffness of the arch in this picture. Susan had a triple arthrodesis operation, which fused the arch bones, making her foot stable so she could bear weight. It left her foot and ankle so rigid that walking was difficult. The energy field seems to have an intelligence that directs the sequence of change. These pictures of the inside of the foot are very important. Notice the muscles crossing the ankle, moving the foot upward. Before energy healing, Susan had a drop foot. Gravity caused her toes to drag on each step. Now she can flex the foot and clear the ground. Remember the early pictures with the stiff, immobile big toe and the inactive, small ones? How exciting to see the full gripping of the toes, the mounding of the arch, with tremendous movement of the great toe. The healing energy moves through the fused bones, eliminating scar tissue, activating, even regenerating, I believe regrowing destroyed muscle tissue. Now Susan can grip the earth. She can stand surely on it, and she can push off from it to walk.
Anyone can see that we're living in the last days of Pompeii. You can feel it. You can feel it everywhere. You can read it every day in the newspapers that our species is urging towards something new. And so the soil of the culture will tolerate someone like me. People think that I was trained by some voodoo priest in Haiti with some mysterious charms and sat around swallowing rum and doing all these strange things. And it's hard for people to understand that I was actually born this way. We keep looking outside for people to show us, to give us knowledge, to do this and that. We have everything.
Emily Conrad trained in classical forms of dance for almost 30 years before founding Continuum. Continuum grew out of her conviction that we have placed enormous limitations on our relationship to the physical universe, and particularly what we call the physical body. This is one of the implants that Dr. Garefus uses in his dental surgery. It's an alloy made from surgical vitalium, which at one time, before its refinement into this special metal, was just rock. Where would the human race be today if primitive man hadn't perceived that a rock is not just a rock, but one phase of a process that includes metal and the development of increasingly more sophisticated metal alloys which have transformed our way of life? If the energy that is both rock and metal undergoes this much transformation in its physical form, what might we do with our own energy if we were able to see it as more than just our body?
Sitting here in a very symbolic gesture, I'm holding the serpent, which is coming from my left side, with my right hand. In mythology and in all antiquity, the serpent was the symbol of primary energy. And in our seeding of our world, in the Bible, the serpent is considered evil, is considered Lucifer, is a messenger of the devil, is considered the lowest, most destructive force. This has been the seeding of our culture. So we find that our understanding of human energy is pretty much that it's evil, that it's destructive, that it's Satan.
What might come of allowing ourselves to identify with this primary energy rather than rejecting it by calling it base and evil?
I find it so interesting that we accept the human body as it is, without any question. We kind of look at ourselves as if this is it. And as far as I'm concerned, it's only the beginning of it. It feels clear to me that we're here to continue the development of it. It's an interesting phenomenon that happens when you de-densify muscle. This is a muscle in 20th century society, and it functions this way. In continuum, which is the work I teach, the muscle moves this way. Well, this has such profound implications in terms of human functioning on just a simple muscular level. It de-densifies matter. In Western culture, a high kind of articulation in terms of the legs is unheard of. In Susan's film, when you see the healing energy of her legs taking over, you'll never see a Western leg that will move like that. Western legs move in a very rigid way. When the body begins to lose its conditioning or loses its relativity, the free growth, the seeding of the evolutionary aspect immediately takes place. And so we don't have to wait for society to evolve for the next millennium. We can actually experience that evolution now.
Emily Conrad says we can experience our own evolution right now. Aura reader Rosalind Briere believes that eventually we will all be able to see the body's alleged energy fields. What is the scientific evidence that auras actually exist?
Rosalind described colors of the human aura, the radiating energy surrounding the body. The left side shows the electronic recording of the pattern of minute energy recorded from sensors placed on the lower abdomen or kundalini during the healing. Rosalind described the aura as magenta in color. The right picture shows the energy pattern taken from the center of the forehead or the third eye. Rosalind saw the aura as blue. These slides represent only 2 of the many dynamic energy pattern changes throughout the sessions, and these did correlate directly with auric changes reported by Rosalind. This is strong evidence that an electromagnetic force, which has been called ki, prana, bioplasmic energy, and life force, does exist, and that it can be studied scientifically in our electronic laboratories. You have seen visual evidence of changes in Susan's muscles. But do we have evidence of what took place in the energy field during the healing process? On the left is a Kirlian photograph of Emily's fingers before a healing session. The picture on the right of Emily's fingers after the same session displays a major change to a complete, full white corona. On the left is a Kirlian photograph of Susan's fingers before healing. The right side after healing still shows the white flares, but now expanded and more complete. These 2 slides indicate that some dynamic action took place, which affected the fields of both participants. To regrow atrophied muscle tissue lost for so many years is so revolutionary as to be medical heresy. We have considered this physiologically impossible with our present knowledge. However, it did happen.
Prana, ki power, bioenergy, pyramid power, auras, and the phantom leaf. The life force within each of us, which Emily Conrad believes we can tap to experience our own evolution. All of these theoretically and seemingly disparate forces are being evaluated scientifically today. Is it possible that they are all different aspects of something in the universe which we are only now beginning to glimpse? Visionaries say that we are multidimensional beings, but that we identify with only one level, the physical. We think that we are our bodies. We consider ourselves individual entities. The development of the individual is a fairly recent occurrence in our evolution. We tend to think of it as the ultimate level, but is this necessarily so? There are those among us who say that this image of ourselves limits our further growth, pointing to the ecological imbalances that have forced themselves upon our awareness. They say that the time has come to participate in the forces of nature which we have unsuccessfully tried to master. Perhaps then we will find that our real selves are far greater in scope than we had ever imagined. Perhaps we will discover that we ourselves are the unknown force.